Hey everyone, it's your girl Nazarene. I'm back with another video. This video is mistakes women make in dating, and I wanted to do it over because I didn't want it to be too long, so hopefully it won't be too long. But this was based on a poll that I posted in the community tab, and this was chosen as one of the 3 topics that I posted that people would be interested in hearing about. So yeah, let's get into it. So the first mistake, and some of these may sound cliche, so hopefully I can bring a different perspective. But yes, the first one is giving too much too soon, doing too much too soon. And not just like the physical intimacy thing, but the intangible things, time, attention, emotional support. There's nothing wrong with showing that you care. There's nothing wrong with taking time to bond with a man that you're dating. Of course, like that's a part of getting to know each other, but we have to be careful that we're not pouring too much of ourselves out too soon, because then we become so attached so early on before we actually get to know the person first, right? We want to get to know the guy first before you are just so emotionally attached and so emotionally invested, and then this makes it harder as you go further and further into the relationship. So vetting him first, vetting him, getting to know him, asking the right questions, and just really paying attention to how you and him connect and the similarities that you have on important issues, like when it comes to politics, religion, children, marriage, physical intimacy, other forms of intimacy, spirituality, and finances. I mean, there's just a variety of things that's important to talk about and observe over time before just jumping head on into a situation with a man just because you like him. And sometimes this can be from a place of codependency where it's like people pleasing, constantly seeking approval, constantly seeking validation. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be validated. There's nothing wrong with wanting approval. There's nothing wrong with wanting attention. There's nothing wrong with wanting to please people. The problem is when it comes from an unhealthy place, and that's what codependency is. It comes from an unhealthy place, and it can cause you to overdo it, or to do it too soon, or to do it with the wrong people. So it's important to make sure that we are aware of the motivations of why we do certain things in dating. So that's the first one, basically doing too much too soon. Another mistake that we make sometimes is not listening as much. So the goal should be to talk less and to listen more. And when I say talk less, I don't mean just sitting there just looking cute. That's the other extreme. A woman who doesn't know how to hold conversation, a woman who doesn't know how to communicate, a woman who's boring, and a man is like, oh my goodness, like sitting with you is almost like looking at dry paint. Yeah, you're good to look at, but like what else, so a man who's looking for substance wants a woman that he can actually have conversation with, a woman that he can learn from, a woman that he can gain from. Of course, every woman is different. Some women may be better in conversation than other women. Some women may be more, they may be more of a, the out of the box type of thinkers, but they can really bring a lot of different ideas. Meanwhile, another one may not. But every woman has value to bring regarding conversation. I don't care how boring you think you might be. If you be yourself and learn to be yourself, you'll be able to bring that. I have friends who are introverts. I'm an introvert, and we always have great conversations. So even introverted women will have great conversation and something to share. Even if she may not be as entertaining as other women, she may not be as overtly like bubbly and energetic, but every woman has something that they can bring when they really get to know themselves and they see the value that they bring. Every woman can bring something. And if you can't, because you genuinely don't know what to talk about, well, then you need to read more. You need to be more aware of what's going on in the world. You need to read more psychology, read more, take time to sit with yourself and get to know yourself more. Some women, they don't do things with themselves. They don't go out to eat by themselves. They don't sit with themselves, in their house and just enjoy their own company. Like that also allows you to really get comfortable with a man because you're comfortable with yourself. So those things are important. But like I have here, having a balance between having good conversation but also not oversharing. So this goes into the talking less part, where you want to talk, you want to have a good conversation, but you don't want to talk too much to where you're like sharing things that are unnecessary or sharing things too soon, before you really gotten to know the person. And some things are just not necessary to share at all, like you want to be transparent. You want to be honest in ways that's necessary, because I don't think lying and being dishonest is a healthy way of going into relationships. We wouldn't want a man to be dishonest to us, so we should strive to not be dishonest with him. You don't need to be dishonest with a man and be lying. That's not necessary. Like some women say, oh, you have to do that because men are playing games. No, you can still be yourself and you can still be honest while still avoiding the games and still avoiding getting played. You don't have to be the same way as the people who are playing games. No, you can still stand in who you are and still spot out the traps, and with God's help, avoid them as much as possible. You may not be able to always avoid it, but you minimize it, right? So it's important to, because if you want a relationship that's of substance, you don't want to go into it with lies and dishonesty. Now you gotta backtrack, now you gotta fix it. I always feel more at peace when I'm more honest, but at the same time, I've also had times where I've overshared. I'm like, I didn't even need to share that with that guy, because this is not a serious relationship. This relationship may not even last. This is not something that I need to share. So it's important to have discernment on what to share and how soon to share and with who. That is important. And sometimes, like I mentioned here, is that, like, once again, sometimes this comes from moving from codependency and seeking approval. We just talk too much and we just overshare, and we think, okay, well, if I don't share this, then he may think that I'm lying, or maybe if I share this, then he'll feel closer to me and we'll be more bonded. And it's like, you don't need to do all of that unnecessarily. Sometimes oversharing can actually push somebody away, especially if it's too soon, because some of the things that you may be sharing may take time for that man to process first, right? So you don't want to spill out too much too soon. It's not just about safety and maybe he has bad intentions. It's also about unraveling yourself slowly over time. It's important to do that. And as women, sometimes we need to learn to be comfortable with silence. And sometimes a man just doesn't want to talk, and it's okay. It doesn't mean he's angry. And sometimes you can just listen to him talking. Let him have the floor sometimes. Let him talk. Let him share his views. Let him be excited about his day and tell you about some of the plans and goals that he has. Or maybe he's angry. He wants to share, like, oh my goodness, today at work, could you believe what this woman said to me? And what do you think about that? And maybe he may ask you, and then you may share your views. Or maybe he just wants to vent, right? And holding that space for him to be able to do that, that's also a way to bond, right? It doesn't have to always be you talking. It's important sometimes to know when to be quiet, you know? Yeah, and it's okay, right? It's okay to give him the floor sometimes. It's okay to let him have the spotlight sometimes. Sometimes that allows you to see more of who he is and get to know him more and see how he expresses himself, and to see whether you and him are compatible. And also to bond more, right? Because if he knows that he can come to you and talk about his day, whether he's angry, whether he's happy, whether he's sad, whatever it is, then he knows that this is a safe space. So it benefits both of you to also allow him to talk sometimes. And if he is somebody who has bad intentions, it allows you to listen more and to see that, okay, this doesn't seem to be adding up. And this definitely does not fit the kind of relationship that I want. The next mistake sometimes that we make as women is hiding the real you. So wearing a mask, not being really your real self. And it's also a form of deception, even though it may not be intentional. So we want to make sure that we're not being deceptive. We want to make sure that when we're coming into a relationship with a man and dating, when I say relationship, I mean dating. Because some people say, oh, well, you're not in a relationship because you're not together. You're in a relationship. You may not be in a committed relationship, but a relationship is a relationship. You're bonding, you're growing, you're evolving together. It's a relationship. So, yeah, so when you're in a relationship with a man and you're dating, whether he's your man or not, whether you're all married or not, but it's important to make sure that in the dating stages, because we're talking about dating, right? In the dating stages, that he is seeing the real you and not seeing a caricature of you. Because what if he likes the caricature but he doesn't like you? Now you've allowed him to fall for the caricature and not the real you. And then when the real you comes out, you're surprised that he's shocked or he's turned off. Well, that's not who he fell in love with. He fell in love with a different display that you gave him. Or maybe you're very passive aggressive, so you don't talk about when you're angry, or you don't talk about things that you don't like, or you don't talk about your real views on certain things, but instead, like, you give him the silent treatment, or you kind of act funny sometimes, and he doesn't really know what's the issue, and then now the real anger comes out, or the real frustration comes out, and he's kind of taken back because he's like, what? Like, I thought you were cool with this, or I thought you was cool with that. So this causes problems, and now a man feels like he has to walk on eggshells around you. But if you really are who you are, and you're being yourself, and you're sharing your views, and being, showing your personality, and he chooses you, you know that he's choosing you for you and not something else that you're portraying. Once again, I'm not saying just pour out your whole self right off the bat. You want to take your time, but you also don't want to be holding back parts that may be beneficial to the relationship, for him to really see the real you, and also for you to see how he responds. You may show the real you, and you may realize, okay, this is not going to work because he doesn't seem to like that, or he doesn't seem to vibe to that well, and that's okay, right? But it's important for you to know that, and I think the earlier the better, because then you don't waste time. So on one hand, that's why, discernment is important. On one hand, you don't want to move too fast, but you also don't want to be too slow either, because then it's like a waste of time. So it's important to have a balance in how you move and how you unravel yourself when you're dating. And oh yeah, the last thing that I'm gonna say, actually, I could just keep it on this slide, but the hopefully y'all didn't hear that sound because I can't click back to where I was before. But last thing I'm going to say is sometimes we hide the real us because of insecurities and certain things that we are struggling with. So if that's the case, then that's something else to work on. Okay, so the next mistake sometimes that we make is afraid to set boundaries up front. It's important for us to know that, okay, these are my boundaries and this is what it is that I need in a relationship. Sometimes we wait too long. We go along with his flow, not just the flow, we go along with his flow. We neglect our own needs and our own concerns. We may complain about it, but we really don't really do nothing as far as actions. And then later on, we want to say, "Oh, well, I'm not doing that no more. I'm not doing this no more. I'm not going to that place no more." He's like, "Well, we always went to this place. Why is it a problem now?" And then now he realizes that you never really wanted to go. You just went along with it because you wanted to please him, or because you thought that maybe he was going to leave or something. And then that's also frustrating because it's like, you know what I mean? Like, why are you trying to switch up? And it's not that she's trying to switch up. It's that she doesn't like the way things are going, and she wants things to be according to the way that she initially wanted them. But the tone has already been set. So that's why it's important to set the tone from the beginning. And it's easier said than done because a lot of women struggle with this. So that's why I talk about, the internal work, because it is important to do the internal work and not be afraid to lose a guy, because sometimes we don't want to set boundaries because we're afraid to lose the guy. We're afraid to be seen as mean or unloving by saying no, or I'm not ready for this, or I'm not comfortable with this. So it's important to do the internal work so that we're not moving from a place of fear, because fear a lot of times will have you doing things that you really don't want to do, and then it develops resentment and bitterness, and then you bring that into a relationship. So you don't want to be saying yes when you really mean no, when you really want no, or you don't want to be saying no when you really want yes. Like, we want a yes to be yes and a no to be no. And also setting boundaries in healthy ways too, because some women do set boundaries, but they're very disrespectful, they're very combative, they're very nasty, they're very passive aggressive, or they use a silent treatment to try to set boundaries. This is also unhealthy, right? So it's important to not just set boundaries, but set them in healthy ways. And then the last thing that sometimes we make mistakes with dating is afraid to walk away. And this is like a cliche one. You know how they talk about the art of walking away, but this is really important because it is something that I've experienced, and I know other women have experienced. Staying too long past the beginning stages. You saw something within month 1 or month 2, and then next thing you know, here you are in month 8, and you're still there. And then you're wondering why there's no peace. You're wondering why there's only frustration. You're wondering why after some point you and him are arguing about the same thing over and over again, because you know that you weren't compatible in that certain area, or you know that he didn't want the same thing that you wanted, but you decided to stay, hoping that maybe he'll change his mind, or maybe trying to change your own mind by saying, well, maybe I don't really want that, and I'll just forget about it. And you push it aside, and you think that you could still continue, and it keeps coming up, and it's like, that's what you really want. For example, a woman may want to get married, and before she has children, but she may go ahead and have a child with a man that she really loves because she's been dating him for a year or 2 years, and then now they're living together, they have kids, but she's not happy because deep down she knows she wants to be married. Deep down she knows that she wanted to get married first, but she didn't set that boundary and that requirement up front. And now it's like there's a lot of resentment and bitterness in the relationship because of that. She may find herself nagging him to get married. She may start being passive aggressive. She may start pulling back on physical intimacy, or this may just be like a lot of tension because deep down there's no like real peace because that's not ultimately what she wants. So it happens pretty often, and the longer a woman stays and the more she invests into that relationship, the harder it is for her to walk away because there's a lot more risk, right? There's a lot more that she could potentially lose, especially if she stayed during her youth, and she may feel like, oh my gosh, like, I started dating this guy at like 17, 18, and now I'm like almost 30. If I leave now, it's like I've given my whole youth to this guy, and, I've given him a child or two, and, they may feel like another woman's now going to come and benefit, from that. So they hold on, but then it's like the longer you hold on, the harder it is to leave. So this kind of goes back into the same thing earlier of like giving too much too soon. I think that when you give too much too soon, it also keeps you like stuck in that limbo where you're like, oh my gosh, I've invested so much time and we've done this, we've done that, we have all these memories and, all this stuff together. And especially if there's a child involved, it becomes even more challenging. But if I had taken my time before I unraveled and before I gave this guy all these benefits, then maybe it would have been a little easier for me to walk away. I don't think it's ever easy to walk away from something that you really love and something that you really want. Sometimes women walk away before they've really fallen in love with a man, but if you fall in love with him, it becomes difficult. But I think it's still not as hard as if you've invested so much time and energy into the relationship. So that just is something that we just have to think about. It's just being very careful of tying ourselves in too many ways with a man before we really know if this is going to be something for the long run. Because if you do tie yourself up to this man in so many ways, it's going to be harder. And this is why some men who have bad intentions, they want to get a woman pregnant. They want them to live together. They want, that woman to be dependent on him for certain things because he has negative intentions. There's nothing wrong with having a child with a man if that's what you want. There's nothing wrong with, him taking care of you financially. There's nothing wrong with, him marrying you and all these different things, because I think those things are beautiful. But if it's happening too soon and he's trying to like push it on you really soon, it should be like a red flag. Because even if a man is trying to propose to you too soon, you gotta question like, okay, we just met like 2-3 months ago, like should we be getting married already? I don't even really know this man yet. So you have to use discernment, because some men will try to push things fast, especially when they know that women really want to get married, they really want to have kids. They know that women are telling other women, oh, if you don't marry by a year, then he don't really care about you, he's not really his dream girl. So they try to rush things quick, and then you think, oh wow, this guy wants to marry me within 6 months, this is amazing. And then you fall for deception. So this is why it's important to have discernment, because you don't want to be jumping too soon into things as well, just like you don't want to be taking too long. There has to be a balance, because if you get married to him within 3 months and then you can find out that this is not the guy that God had for you, now you are tied to this man in a marriage, so it's important to take your time before tying yourself in so many different ways with a man, because then when it's time to walk away because this is not the person that God has for you, it's going to be much harder because of all these different investments that have happened in the relationship. And it's the same thing for men. Some men want to leave relationships that they are in with women, but because they have kids and they're married and they have all these things, he stays. But he's not really happy with the woman. So, we have to be careful that we're not just settling in situations because we feel like we have too much to lose. That's not love. Love is staying because I really want to be here, and not just because of my feelings, but because I have a duty to this relationship. I really love this person, and we have a goal and a duty to one another within this relationship. Not, oh, I'm staying with him because we got kids. I'm staying with him because I gave him my youth and I'm getting older now and I don't know if I'm gonna get somebody else, or I'm staying with him because, you know, he take care of me financially and I don't even know if another man's gonna come along and do it. This is not a healthy way of staying with people, but it happens often. And people stay way longer than they should. And a lot of times when you look at the beginning of the relationship, many times the relationship did not start off good. There wasn't enough vetting done in that relationship, and one or both people weren't being honest about what they really wanted and standing on that, and ending things much sooner than, you know, when they should have. So that happens pretty often. But because this video is about women, I'm focusing on women and how we tend to do that. Men, you know, men will stay in situations too sometimes because it benefits them. Because sometimes men are thinking from a logical perspective. I just may not be the ultimate woman that I want, but she's giving me some good punani. She has great conversation. She's cute. Maybe you have a nice body, whatever it might be. Sometimes women is giving a man money. Sometimes, you know, they living together, paying bills. And that may not even be the woman that he ultimately wants, but it makes sense for him financially. It makes sense for him physically. It makes sense for him emotionally. And when he finds a woman that he really wants, he's going to go get it. So men do the same thing too, but usually it's not for the same reason that he's staying. He's not staying because he's afraid to walk away. He's staying because it's benefiting him. And he may genuinely like you and love you too, but you're just not the ultimate stop, right? You're not the ultimate woman. But women tend to stay a lot of times for a lot more emotional reasons, like, oh, like I said, oh, we got kids together, oh, this and that. And I feel like the only time when men tend to not want to walk away for emotional reasons is usually because they really genuinely love that woman. They don't want to lose her, or they have a lot to lose by walking away. But when men stay with people that they ultimately don't want to be with, it's usually because it's benefiting them. But women will stay in situations that do not benefit them because they're afraid of losing everything they invested, and they're afraid of another woman coming and benefiting from it. I think that's the difference. Yeah, but it's not always the case. You know, it can go both ways, but I'm just going off of what I tend to observe. But anyways, I'm gonna stop here and go to the last one here, and I just want to read it. It says, many of us may not have gone about things the best in the past. However, we can improve for the future, not just for a relationship, but for the calling on our lives as women. So that's basically the video. Hopefully it was beneficial to y'all. Hopefully y'all can understand me with my retainer. And yeah, and hopefully this is, you know, this is like half of the length of the other video that I was initially gonna post. So I didn't want to post something that was like 42 minutes. So yeah, but let me know in the comments what y'all think about as far as some of the mistakes that women make in dating, and also let me know about any other topics that you may be interested in hearing about. I'm not a relationship guru, I'm not a relationship expert, I'm not any of that. I'm just sharing things based on things that I've experienced, things that I've seen other women experience, and things that I've read and observed. And I believe that we all can bring a different perspective to encourage one another to have better experiences in dating and in life in general as women. Hopefully y'all enjoyed and take care. Bye.